Good afternoon. Welcome to our final History at Noon with Paul Frickman. I hope you enjoy. Hear some stories about some things in the past and fun stuff and learn lots of things.
Yes.
All the things over here. Can't wait to hear about.
Yes. Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for the honor. So I do have a lot of memorabilia. I have a little traveling museum that I had down in Florida. At one time, to backtrack, my mom and dad built the Castle restaurant across from the high school in 1960. And so growing up in the restaurant business, I always had the idea that I was going to want to build a restaurant, so I've been collecting all this memorabilia. And you don't want to get into the restaurant business. My parents offered it to me in 1988, and I was in the health club business, and they had had it 28 years. And I thought, well, the health club, I'm there at 6 a.m. and I leave at 4 or whatever. In the restaurant business at that time, the Castle was 10 to 11, 10 o'clock in the morning to 11 at night.
Wow.
And my father was there, obviously, probably a couple hours more than that, and they did it for 6 months. Opened Easter and would close by the end of September. They would stay open weekends for the football games.
7 days a week they were open?
7 days a week.
Yeah.
7 days a week. So they got to the Castle through my relatives. My mother, my father were from Syracuse. Their relatives came from my father's relatives. His father came from Germany over to Duluth. And my grandmother was French and came from Canton. On my mother's side, both her parents came from England. One was a dentist, and her mother passed away early. She lived in New York, and after the stock market crash, he committed suicide.
Wow.
And my mother got shipped off to Syracuse to live with one of her uncles. And her uncles were in the construction business. And so they did the concrete for the Thousand Island Bridge.
Wow.
So my mother, on opening day, and I do have a picture. So there's opening day.
What year was that?
1938, 39.
I thought it was 39.
31. And I have the original program. I couldn't find it. So my mother was in the second car behind the president on opening day.
Wow.
So we went to the archives. Okay, we got to get a picture of mom. Well, how old was mother on opening day? She was 8 years old.
Wow.
So the cars had such high sides
Couldn't see her.
that you see the car, but there's nothing in the back seat. This is where my mother was. So she got to, so every year when they had major celebrations, I built the bridge, and that was like the 50th anniversary of the bridge. And I got this at an antique at the show up at the conference center, at the arena, many years ago. And you know where this went?
On the
Okay, well, if I put
License
the,
plate cover.
cover.
well, you put it on your bumper where they had little steel things, and you wrapped it on your bumper.
Right.
Oh.
So obviously they didn't last because they were paper, but they actually would wrap on your
That
bumper.
one lasts.
It's like a bumper.
Yeah, and I can't tell you how much I didn't pay for it, but yeah, way too much money. Yeah, but it was very cool. Yeah. So the so I growing up in the Castle and working for my dad. When I went to Potsdam State as a freshman, my parents told me I needed to get another job outside of the Castle and learn what it's really like to work. And I got a job at the Bridge Authority. So I was Mr. Petunia at the Thousand Island Bridge for one summer and took care of all the flowers.
Oh.
And Louis, I can't remember Louis' last name, had his greenhouse in Alex Bay, and they would change the date box every day. So, and I think they still do it.
Yeah.
That the date is out there
Right, and flowers.
in flowers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty neat, growing and actually being part of that. So getting back to my parents, so my father, after World War II, my parents got married. My grandfather worked for the Herald American, and he was the Northern New York, took care of all the newspapers. So whatever that, I can't remember what the name of that job was. And my father had a station wagon and had newspaper boys and distributed newspapers all through Oneida, Canastota, Wampsville. And so he was in the newspaper business. In 1959, my grandfather died. My uncle was a Korean War vet, and he was a customs inspector up here at the Thousand Island Bridge. He was a customs inspector and told my father that there was no ice cream place in Clayton, and they needed to build an ice cream place. And my mother and father were night people, and they wanted to build a nightclub. And so it was alcohol or ice cream.
Yeah.
And they figured that ice cream would be a lot less trouble.
Yeah.
And so they had to buy the land next door to build the restaurant. And next door was the St. Lawrence Motor Lodge.
Oh.
And it is still there today. And so they had to buy the motel to get the land to build the castle. And early picture of the castle in my well-organized manner here.
You said sarcastically.
Because that motel is empty, isn't it?
That motel is actually occupied
By.
by an individual. And originally the castle was just without the dining room. And we have a couple pictures, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So the first year was just the concrete building. The Wingrath brothers built it. And then the next year they added on. Now the myth that I have is that they got the money to build the dining room from Seal Test because my father invented Rocky Road and Heavenly Hash ice cream.
Oh, my favorite.
We kind of did some research, and we think that Rocky Road was in California already, and Heavenly Hash, my father was a big hash eater, and we made Heavenly Hash at night, draw it out the vanilla ice cream, throw in crushed nuts, throw in some chocolate syrup, freeze it up, and there you go, Heavenly Hash. And the Rocky Road was chocolate ice cream with crushed nuts and chocolate syrup, and you froze it up, marshmallow syrup, and then that was Rocky Road. So that was in 1960. That was in 1960. So I did an article in the Thousand Island Museum about growing up in the castle, and I had the opening day advertisement, and here it is: French fries, peeled, sliced, and cooked from local potatoes, 25 cents and 40 cents. And it says, our food is as fresh as our health.
What a slogan, huh?
I know. Come on. I know my father was kind of a wise guy. So that
What year was that?
that was 1960 is when it opened up. 1960.
So that was vacant property?
That was an empty piece of land.
Yeah.
The original colors were that green and checked, white checked was the original colors. And then in 1976, my father was tired, and I was teaching school at the time and had the summer off. And so he says, well, why don't you come up and repaint the castle? And I repainted it that whatever. And he says, paint the back wall first to see if I like it. And so it ended up being, you can go ahead and pass it around. It ended up being that design. And early on, there was a guy that ran off the road after he saw it because it was such an unusual colors. And as soon as it was sold, it was repainted. So growing up,
Thank you.
I started working there when I was 10, 12. And so I'm sitting in the back room, and I was handicapped at the time, and the state came in and said that I could not be at my father's restaurant, that they needed to hire a babysitter, and that I couldn't be there. And my father made the comment, and I was there when the state guy came in, and my father made the comment, where do I send the babysitting bill to? And that was the last time that the state came by. I guess your son, you can do whatever you want to with a son. So one of my first jobs was making French fried potatoes. And I still will not eat a frozen potato. It's not the same. And they had drums this big, and you put half a bag in, and you tumbled it, and then you picked out the eyes, and then you put it in cold water, and then you French fried it, then you put it in a solution, and you fill it with water, you let it get cold, then you drain it, then you add more cold water, and then you put it in the refrigerator, and then you drain the cold water, and then you could cook the French fries. And so it was quite a labor-intensive operation. So as teenagers, my parents would sometimes leave us kids to run the place on Sunday, and usually 4 of us could run the restaurant. 2 girls in the dining room, one of us cooking, one of us at the front window. And we would close. It would take an hour to close. And when we were drinking age, we'd all go to O'Brien's afterwards. And we had this unusual, the boys had this unusual ritual that when we hired new girls, that we would hide buckets of water around the restaurant, and at the end of the night, we'd throw the water on the girls. And that was the initiation.
That was fun, huh?
Well, it didn't last long.
Yeah.
So Vicky Hetty was one of them. She went home crying, and I don't think the bad part was that when we threw the water, you had these huge stacks of ice cream cones. That water got on the ice cream cones and melted all the cones.
Wow.
So otherwise, my parents would never have known. I'm sure Vicky told her father, and her father told Dr. Hetty. And my father came back the next day and he says, no more water, no more water. So that was the initiation. They also did a special thing when I had a younger sister and an older sister, 3.5 years older and 4 years young, 2.5 years older and 3 years younger. Is on graduation, they would open up the restaurant at 5 a.m. in the morning and serve all the kids breakfast. And so we had pancakes and sausage. I think that was the choice. And on my graduation, a truck driver pulled up with his rig and walked in the door and looked around and said, "Is this all you got? Is pancakes and sausage?" And my mother said, "Well, this is a graduation party. You're more than welcome." And he goes, "No, thanks." And he left. So, great experiences growing up. And going back there, I went back this morning, the memories as being a very special kind of place. One year, I think it was before they sold it, they had a miniature golf course behind. And the miniature golf course was really, really popular. And I think once they sold it, they tore the miniature golf course down. But it was, when I came home, it was a very busy place.
And that's where the car wash is today?
That's where the car wash is today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, they had the big brown, if anybody remembers, they had a big ice cream cone sitting out front. The football players took it one night, and put it in the middle of a cow field someplace. And there's the ice cream cone standing in the middle of the cow field. And my father was just livid. But yeah, I mean, you got it back in one piece. So in the winter times, growing up here, in 1960, the first thing that my parents that my father took me to was the ice races, horse racing on the ice.
Oh, wow.
wow.
And so this is a program, and that program is from 1941.
Oh, my goodness.
And in it was the Crippled Children's Fund. It was a little advertisement for the Crippled Children's Fund, which I thought was a really cool extra piece that was included in that. It was basketball games at the old high school. So that was kind of a special.
Where did this ice, did it happen right out here with the horse?
They had a French Creek. Yeah, so that would be this would be a picture right here. Yeah, so that'd be a picture right there.
Because that doesn't freeze over anymore, right? That area?
French Creek Bay, I think does. Yeah, I mean, depending, I mean, the main channel, it's been a long time since then, but.
When were they discontinued?
That year, 1960 was
That was the
was the last year. Well, what happened was a drunk walked in front of a horse and it killed him, and so that was the end of the horse races.
Guy or horse?
So the growing up in the winter times, we had a lot of hobbies. We had a house on Mary Street that we bought after we sold the motel, and then we went to a house on Mary Street, which was a custom built arts and crafts from a ship captain, and he hauled all the wood in from the Great Lakes. Had oak, cherry, rosewood. All the electric was enclosed in lead pipes. They had buzzards in the dining room, the living room, and the master bedroom. And they had an electrical system back in the 20s, which was pretty innovative. So this would be the wall socket. This would be the wall socket. And this was where the electric wire was, and it fit inside here. So everything in the house was like that. And to me, that's a whole lot easier than the way it is with the two-prong today. And so when we got there, we had to replace every wall socket, every electric socket. The basement had a steel beam across the bottom, concrete, and we ended up with a game room downstairs. We had a shuffleboard, ping pong table, pool table, bar, train track, remote slot cars, dartboard, TV. We had one of the only color TVs that would get Syracuse, and my friends would come over and watch Lost in Space. So at the end of every season at the castle, we had a special. So you'd have vanilla chocolate, black raspberry, peach brandy. And so at the end of the season, they would draw all the soft ice cream out and freeze it up into these 2-gallon containers. And that is what we ate all winter long. And because of freezer burn, I guess, we could only eat one at a time. So we couldn't go from black raspberry to... So after so much black raspberry, it's time to call up your friends and, eat the ice cream up so we could get to another ice cream. So, and black raspberry I've never been a fond of because it seems like that's what we had a ton of at the end of the year. So, winter times were pretty brutal. Blizzards, cold. Growing up on Mary Street, where the municipal building is now, was the ice skating rink. And it was outdoors, and they had a little house that you could warm. And I can just only remember, I think had plastic bags on my feet, is that I was always cold as a kid. And I was a bad kid. I mean, and so if I'm in the house for so long and my parents just were tired of putting up with me, they'd say, go outside. And I always came back a better kid because I was cold. And one year, we had black ice, and we actually ice skated on the streets. And that was a very cool experience. We had I can't remember what year the blizzard was in the mid-60s, that we were building ice caves down at the old Grand Union, and kind of a snowplow truck went in there, man, we'd have been goners, but you know. And the other thing that we did as kids is we would hook onto cars. You know what hooking was, right? Yeah. And so one of the brothers of a girl that I graduated high school with, he had a ring on his hand, and it got caught on the bumper, and it took his finger off.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. So that got around real quick, and the hooking, you know, everybody thought it was a lot of fun, but you know, the hooking disappeared real quick. I did witness one winter a guy coming from Grindstone Island with the roof cut out of the car, and his car went through the ice, and it was right. We all saw it downtown, and he lived. Ice boat went and got him, and they said the only reason why he lived is because he was so drunk that the alcohol content in his blood kept him from freezing to death. So, now my ice story is, so I got a boat when I was 15. They said it was my parents said it was a lot safer to have a boat than a car. So my mother would transport me to Watertown for the Power Squadron boating classes that winter. And I got the boat in the fall and had a little 14-foot from Reed's Marina in Fisher's Landing. And my parents made me carry river charts. I did hit a shoal. I need to go to a shoal party. I did hit it one shoal, but carried the river charts. Had two near catastrophes where things could have gone sideways really quick and survived. So my sophomore year in college, in the springtime, we would have a competition of who would put in their boat first. So there was 4 of us that had boats. I won the straw, and I got to put my boat in first, and then who would water ski first. And we seemed to think that there was still ice chunks going down the river. And so we're in French Creek Bay. Well, in front of McCormick's restaurant, in the winter times, they would put a car on the ice, and they put a clock in it, and people would bet when it was going to fall through the ice. And so McCormick's, if you remember McCormick's, they had a big viewing, all the windows, big viewing, and guys would be drinking and watching the thing slowly sink. And a diver would go down and get the clock to see who won all the money. So we're away at college, Tom Agliano and I, and we put the boat in, and we're going to water ski in French Creek Bay. And that winter, where did they put the car? They didn't put the car in front of McCormick's restaurant, they put it on French Creek Bay. So we're water skiing, and then all of a sudden David Albertine is skiing behind me, or skiing behind the boat, and all of a sudden the boat engine flies up in the air, cuts the rope, and Dave Albertine ends up on the roof of the sunken car. And the engine went up, and it came down and tore the rear end off the boat, the transom off the boat. Now, I think the boat still worked, but I mean, it was the Chamber of Commerce who put the car on the ice, and my father was president of the Chamber of Commerce at the time. And Audie Ciro, and he told me this recently, he goes, Paul, the reason why the insurance didn't cover it is because they didn't carry a policy for a boat hitting a sunken car. And so there was no insurance policy for it. So my father had to sue the insurance company in order to get the money, and I got a brand new boat out of it. So that was kind of the good side of the story. And I ended up writing a little thing in the Thousand Island Sun about the car on the ice. So that was one of the cool things of growing up in this area. One time, a couple of us all went down to Boat Castle, and at that time, Boat Castle was abandoned, and we went exploring. And I guess all sorts of kids around the area. My brother-in-law used to climb on the roof and watch the fireworks. So one time, I had my new boat. It's the 4th of July, and my girlfriend lives on Thousand Island Park, and I pick her up at Thousand Island Park, and we go to the Alex Bay fireworks. And it rains, so I put the top up, I put the side curtains on, and we're heading home. And I'm looking through the windshield, and I see these two lights kind of going like this. And I go, so I stick my head out the window, and it's a freighter coming right at me.
Wow.
So, you know, because you want to be in the channel on the way home, because at night, you know. So that was one of the, you know, could have been a bad thing. And at night, so another time, I took my girlfriend to Wellesley Island State Park. And then nightfall, and then coming back to take her to Thousand Island Park, I'm looking out there and I go, whoa. So you had to kind of use lights. When did they separate? And when did they come together to know where the gaps were in the islands? And so driving at night is a pretty sketchy thing. So had lots of fun experiences growing up until 1973. So I was a sophomore at Potsdam State, and I was at the bank on Easter break, and a guy comes in from fraternity and says, Paul, we have one more spot in our 60 Rambler. Do you want to come to Florida for a week? So I called up my parents, let me take $100, and I went to Florida for a week. I had relatives in Bradenton, and was supposed to meet them at the Howard Johnson's on Fort Lauderdale Beach Saturday at noon. And so I did, and told them that I wasn't coming back. So I went down there with my cousin, drove back, and ended up flying back, hitchhiked from the Syracuse airport to Potsdam, back to school, was 3 days late. I had a great tan. I had a really cute girlfriend that was so mad that I had a great tan that I go, well, and so I had friends that said, well, why don't you go to school in Florida? And so I transferred to the University of South Florida the next fall. And I got my first car from a retired school teacher, and it was a 67 Mustang.
Wow.
So I took that to Florida and graduated in 76 from the University of South Florida, and taught school for 4 years. First, my first job, 1976, brand new junior senior high school. The principal was a retired Marine, and the athletic director and the dean was a retired Marine, and spoiled me of how a school system should operate. I would come home summers and work for mom and dad at the castle, and hang out and help them out. And then eventually I ended up quitting school in teaching in 1980. Got into some other businesses along the way. And so I'd been down there 50 years. And 2 winters ago, my sister was sick, and I thought I'd come back up here and help out. And she didn't need any help. And it got kind of cold and dreary. And I go, what am I going to do? And so I started making models, and I made models as a kid, because what are you going to do in the winter times? And I started substitute teaching back in the schools, and substitute taught 45 days last winter, which I thought was pretty cool.
You're brave.
And I found a couple models of cars that my father had. So in 1960, he had a 1960 Thunderbird.
Yeah.
And I think I hand painted this. Hand painting is really difficult.
Yeah.
And I remember we went to whatever's an old forge, whatever the
Fairlane?
whatever the theme park
Oh.
is, an old forge.
Old Fortune.
We went one Sunday in the fall in the 1960 Thunderbird, and the state troopers stopped my dad for speeding. And we're all 3 of us are in the back seat, the kids, and my mother said, "Don't say a word, don't say." And my father was. So he went to on the corner was the old gas station, and they changed the oil, and they didn't tighten the nut. And on the way to Syracuse, he blew the engine up.
Oh.
Oh.
So that was the end of the 1960s.
Wow.
I learned how to drive on a Ranchero. So we had this at the castle as our go-to car. So this is similar, a little bit different rear end, and he had spoke wheels, and it was 3-speed on the column, and I learned how to drive on this car. So when I would come home from college, I had a girlfriend in Rochester. He let me take the Ranchero to Rochester. And on the way back, on 81, it was 3-speed, 289. On the way back, I decided I'd figure out how fast this baby will go. So I got to about 110,
Wow.
and they had a little rise in the car, kind of, you know? And it's like a whoa. So I slowed down, and a couple miles down the road was 3 state troopers. So it was kind of one of those things that I got my message early. That because if I'd been stopped, the troopers had stopped me. Oh, my father, he would have been livid, and he had lots of excuses to be livid at me. Yeah, probably the worst thing that I did as a kid, and I want to write a story in the Thousand Ounce Sun about it. Is O'Brien? We would go to O'Brien's. So O'Brien's was the go-to place, and I'm sitting at O'Brien's after work one night, and my best friend growing up comes in and says, "Paul, who was they had a gas pump down where the coal docks used to be? Farrell's had a marine gas pumps." And so my buddy comes in and he says, "Paul, they left their gas pumps on." So I had a couple buddies. We all took our boats and filled up our tanks with gas. Okay? And then somebody had the brilliant idea. "Wow, your father has these 10-gallon milk cans. Let's go fill up a couple of those too."
Wow.
And another kid says, "Well, we'll put it in my grandfather's boathouse. He's never there." So, obviously not thinking, "Oh yeah, great idea." So we filled up these 10-gallon milk cans full of gasoline, put it in this guy's boathouse. I go away for freshman orientation in college. So I have no idea what's going on. And my mother comes to pick me up and does not say one word to me the whole entire ride home from Potsdam. I get into the door and she roundhouses me. Boom! And obviously things went bad as they could. So the boys ended up blaming me, even though I heard about it secondhand. And my mother said if your best friend had been there, he would have told you not to do it. And he was the one that came in and said, "Hey, they left their gas pumps on." So we ended up paying an evaporation. So I think we took 80 gallons or 40 gallons, and we paid twice as much. I think my part was like $60 or $70. And my mother said, "You lose the boat for the entire summer." And so I went to my father and I started crying to him. And I said, "Dad, this is before my freshman year." And he goes, "Paul," he goes, "you got to be aware of the consequences of your behavior. Be aware of the consequences of your behavior." And it took a while what does that mean? What does that mean? He goes, "If you're doing something and it's probably not right, what's the worst possible thing that can happen to you if you get caught?" And he goes, "That's what you got to think about every time you think that, maybe you could get away with it, or maybe, there's nothing's going to happen, that it still could happen. And you got to let that guide." And I tell you, it was a pretty important lesson. And he goes, "You don't lose your boat for the whole summer, you just lose it for 2 weeks." So I lost the boat for 2 weeks, but I learned a very valuable lesson that, you got to think about, what are the outcomes of whatever kind of behavior that you're going to do. So.
Great fatherly advice, right?
Great fatherly advice. Yes. And he gave, and I think growing up in this kind of community, growing up in a small community, is that you had that kind of support. I noticed that at the Bay High School, that there's smaller classes, but you get to work with kids one-on-one and give them advice and counsel them, and they can ask you questions. Is that growing up in this high school was, and in this village was a real blessing. So.
How'd they find out which boys did it? Who snitched on who?
You want to know their names?
No, but how did it come about? They found it.
Oh, they started bragging.
Oh.
They started bragging they committed the perfect crime, and the grandfather where the gasoline, where the milk cans were,
Yeah.
the boathouse, he went and visited it. So he happened to be there and say, what are these milk cans doing in a boathouse? So then that's when they said I was the bad guy. And I guess they got hauled to the police. And here I am at freshman orientation, just, having the time of my life.
I
So.
thought you were gonna tell us that there was an explosion as a result
that's
of
what
these
I was
open
afraid
Yeah, no,
cans of gas.
Thank heaven.
Right?
No, no, but right, it could have,
Yeah.
things could have gone really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was actually a blessing in disguise to think that, no criminal consequences, and, just pay, twice what you stole, And when somebody leaves their gas pumps on, that's not an indication that you can go ahead and.
Open invitation.
Yeah. So in 1961, I was still on crutches. My parents would loan me to my grandparents that lived in Binghamton. And my grandfather took me to Yankee Stadium. And Yankee Stadium was closed that day, but I was still on crutches, and we walked around Yankee Stadium and stopped at the gift shop, and I got a Yankee baseball with all the autographs, and I played with the baseball. So much for that value.
Very lovely.
Yeah. I did end up with a Joe DiMaggio baseball autograph. And my grandfather, while we were at the gift shop, I got this pennant. This pennant of the '63. Well, actually, that was later, '63 of the American League. So I was a big Mickey Mantle. Here's a nice picture of Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio. My sister went to the World's Fair, and she got this nice World's Fair pennant. So at 15, the Episcopal Church, I was an acolyte, and we went to Expo 67. So we broke up into teams. So we were teams of two of us, okay? So Billy Hetty was who I was with. And by the end of the night, he was chasing a girl, whatever. And I was on my own. And when the night was over, I had no idea where I was. So here I am on Expo 67 on the property and have no idea how to get back home. And eventually found police. And the policeman go, where are you staying? And I go, I don't know. He goes, who are you with? And I go, I'm with the Episcopal acolytes. And he knew exactly where to take me. Oh. And so the Father Hutchins was the rector, and his son had type 1 diabetes. And by the time I got back there, his son was out on the street looking for me. And his father was so concerned that being type 1 that he was going to have a low blood sugar. And he gave me a verbal lashing in front of all these boys that just would not end. And it was another, it was a great experience going. It was a fabulous place. Man in His World, I think was the name of it.
Yeah.
Where was the expo?
In Montreal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a really nice dinner tray. From my parents, plastic with Man in His World. And I put it on one of my moving carts, and the tray fell off the cart and just lost one whole side of the tray. And I was going to bring that, but it's like, well, it's damaged. So, when you have a little traveling museum, things will have a tendency to break. So I've broken a few things. I collect die-cast cars. I really like cars. And so there's a postcard. So my mother and father are visiting me, and we go to Mount Dora, and we have a postcard of the St. Lawrence Motor Lodge. So that big picture I showed you, we ended up making into a postcard. And if you look at the right hand side, where is the picture of the? If you look at the right hand side of the postcard, here it is. If you look at the right hand side of the postcard, there's this little two-tone green.
Oh, yeah.
1959 Ford. And I like to put together little dioramas. So there's the car.
Cool.
So I put the postcard in the back and put the car in the front. And here is the two-tone 59 Ford that we have.
Wow. Now,
Yeah.
you made that model?
I did not make that model. No, I could not make that model. I make bigger models that are a little bit easier to put together.
How did you obtain that?
There's die-cast sites. They make thousands and thousands of die-cast metal cars, trucks, planes. And I just happened to see this, and it was actually on sale because it had some little damaged piece on it.
So that's a two-door wagon?
A two-door wagon, yeah,
Oh, my goodness.
country sedan.
Yeah, like a Nomad, Chevy Nomad used to be a two.
But it was a huge car.
Yeah.
It was a huge car. Yeah. And when that rusted out, then we got the Ranchero. So that was a cool little device.
So your dad was a Ford guy?
Dad was a Ford guy. Yeah, every year he would get a different Ford. Yeah.
Wow.
So my parents, in the winter times, my parents would belong to a curling club.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And they'd go to Canada, and they go to Gananoque, and I think even Kingston, and curl. So there's my mother's little curling thing,
Wow, cool.
and I actually have an ashtray that's got like a little stone, a little stone. But they would go across the bridge, and they met their Canadian friend. They met Canadian people, and I came back my freshman year in college, so that would be 72, and my parents bought a snowmobile and a snowmobile suit. And guess what? I was never cold again. So one time they took it to Canada, and my parents' Canadian friends lived on a lake that was like 10 miles long, like one of those Rideau lakes.
Yeah.
And they would drink, then get in a snowmobile and go as fast as they could to the end of the lake. And they had friends that lived at the end of the lake, and they would drink, and then they come all the way back, and then they would drink, and play darts. How they even played darts when they were, and that was their evening activity, And snowmobiles kind of scared me.
Yeah.
Because, when you're going 50, 60 miles an hour, and it's like, and again, you hear horror stories of things happening to kids. But I remember taking the snowmobile out into the country and visiting I can't remember who I'd visited, and it was so cool, because I was warm. And in the winter times, in the bad winters, if you didn't have a snowplow, not everybody had snowplows back then. You either had a snowmobile or you walked. And when I would come home Christmases, we would do the Riverside Drive crawl. So we would start at whatever the first bar was that opened, and have one drink at every bar, end up at O'Brien's, and then make our way back. And that was our evening entertainment, was walking, through the snow, because that was the only way you could get around back then. My father had chains. When we first moved here, he put chains on his tire.
Yeah.
So Frank Snowplow was still there, and Ron Duford, I grew up with. Ron Duford and I would go down and play in the snowplows and play hide and seek. And I think we had BB guns and Indian arrows, and we played in the snowplows, which I thought was which I thought was very cool, but obviously a
What could go wrong?
huge light of what could go wrong. One time, a freighter stopped to get coal. So was it Consols? Was that the name of the place? Still had the coal docks. Well, one time they let us kids jump off the ship. So they let us climb onto the ship and then jump off the bow, which was even higher. And I remember my rear end legs going over. I was going to dive. Yeah. And I thought I was going to die. I actually thought I was going to die. So there was kids jumping off the ships, and that was, well, you won't be doing that today. So another kind of a risky venture back there that we couldn't do those kinds of things anymore. So.
Now, Paul, you have issue of stock on the back of that. Are you gonna,
Yes.
You gonna go into that or not?
Well, so my father formed a corporation when he got built the castle.
Yeah.
And issued stock, but I think he only issued like enough shares that they only had to give one to him, and that was it. Only 50%. One summer when I was teaching school, I got to work with John McDonald, who was with the American Boat Line. And that was when they had the Adonis, the Neptune, the Venus, the Neptune 2. And this was a little advertising piece of that. Does anybody remember? Yeah. Faintly.
Up until when was that active? Any idea, Paul?
I don't know when the antique boat, when the American Boat Line closed. I was there in 80. So I was a traveling salesman. So I would get pictures of the boats and 10% off coupons. And I'd go around New York State dropping off at every gas station and tourist. So I'm in Lake Placid on the 4th of July, and I locked the keys in the trunk.
Oh boy.
And so I spent the 4th of July in Lake Placid, and they had the Olympics that winter, so it was summer '79. And I bought every poster and Olympic thing that I could find. And so I have an Olympic poster collection, of course. And it snowed on the 4th of July on Whiteface Mountain.
Come on. Seriously?
So, yeah, you could see it. Yeah, it was there. Because the elevation was high enough that it was that cool that it snowed on the top of Whiteface Mountain, which I thought was very cool. Yeah. I became a fan from watching a TV show called Due South, and I have a collection of, and these are lead, is Mounties. So I have a collection of Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and people that live out in Canada actually send me Royal Canadian Mounted Police stuff. And these are little lead horses, and they're very cool. Yeah, I've always been impressed. My father had a Mountie, some kind of liquor dispenser with a Mountie. I'm thinking it was a Mountie. And my brother-in-law got it before I got it. And so, can't have everything.
What did you teach? I'm sorry. Diverting.
First year, I taught earth science. And then I was supposed to marry to a home economics teacher, and you couldn't be married and teach at the same school.
Wow.
So I went to the oldest school in Tampa, Hillsborough High School, and taught high school biology, physical science, consumer math, and coached the high school swim team, and left in 1980 with guns and riots going on. So we had riots in the cafeteria the last 2 weeks, and I was right in the middle of all that mess, and I go, there's got to be something else to do besides, teach. So
you went into sales.
Yeah, so I left and got into recreation, and ended up working at a hospital as an exercise physiologist for 20 years. and they downsized me in 2011. And I go, what am I going to do now? So I took a couple classes and went back to teaching at an urban high school of 4,000 kids. And it was literally a nightmare. For first year wasn't bad, ninth grade center, all the science teachers were all around you, so you got to collaborate a lot. Had a shooting on campus the first week we were there, and it was the two Jamaican drug lords. A new one had moved into town, and they shot it out in the middle of the cornfields, the football field between the two schools.
Was this in Florida still?
In Florida, in Orlando.
Wow.
And we were all in a teachers meeting, and they never notified us that there was a shooting. And one of the husbands called up and says, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" "Well, we had a shooting and you're on lockdown." So we look out the back window, and there's a county sheriff with an M16 against the fence. And, we all hide in the closet for a while, and nobody calls us. And eventually we all venture out and ask the vice principal and the principal why they didn't notify us that there was a shooting, and neither one of them would say anything to us. So you knew that, that the writing was on the wall. So the first year wasn't bad, but after that, so eventually did graduate work, got into recreation, did graduate work in exercise physiology, and worked at a hospital for 20 years, and that was very rewarding. So after the leaving teaching for the second time is when I took all the memorabilia and found out that I couldn't open up a restaurant. Is started going to senior centers and nursing homes, and kind of telling stories about the different artifacts. As a high school teacher, and being in Florida, one of my favorite buddies here.
Oh my gosh.
So we used to see lots of alligators. So I worked at a resort in 1980 for 4 years, and it was a neighborhood, and they built a resort around a neighborhood with a golf course. And the kids would throw marshmallows onto the golf course, and the alligators would eat the marshmallows. Well, guess what else they ate? Golf balls.
Oh, wow.
So guys would play golf out there, and all of a sudden their balls were gone. And so they had to go around and tell the kids, you can no longer feed the alligators marshmallows. And this, there was alligators bigger than this on the golf course. Yeah, they're pretty scary animals yeah. So big nature guy. One of my presentations that I brought back with me was my nature presentation to, the different kinds of artifacts of nature, fossils, minerals, and do that in the classroom. So
Is that
Yeah.
like a real alligator?
that's a real alligator. Yeah, would you like to feel him?
Sure, yeah, let's see,
Yeah, he's real.
Do you have any shoes made from the rest of them?
Yeah. No.
Purses?
Yeah, no. First is right.
It's like wood. They got a lot of, do you want me to pass it around?
Sure. Yeah, people want to handle it.
Too many.
And again, I'm glad you said that. Is I would suggest that you wash your hands when you get home. So handling any stuff, just.
So you were gone for 50 years, Paul?
I was gone for 50 years.
You did not visit?
Yes, I did all the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I came up all holidays, summers. 19 years at the hospital, they kind of were reluctant to let you take any kind of vacation.
Yeah.
So you had to. When my father had his open heart surgery, they just passed the Family Leave Act, and I had to invoke the Family Leave Act in order to go visit my father. So, but they usually gave me 2 weeks a year, and usually most of that time was coming up here. Yeah, and visiting friends, and all my friends always had boats, so I always had a chance to get out on the river. Yeah. Any questions? Let me see. Any more?
Did your folks actually run that motel in the beginning?
Yes, for the first year. Yeah, and I remember my sister. So I'm 8. My sister's 11. She's changing beds. And it was, I think they had 6 units. And we were only there until the fall, and my mother was running up and down the hill between the motel and the restaurant. So opening day, so I'm 8 years old. Opening day, we gave away free ice cream, and they were lined up past the motel for the free ice cream, which I thought was really cool, and I remember that. And also was at the motel when they had the Frink fire.
The what fire?
The Frink fire
Wow.
The
in 19.
snowmobile?
No, the snowplow factory.
Yes.
Oh yeah. 19. It had to be 1960, and you could hear fire sirens all night long. So those kinds of vivid memories, that you just don't forget. Now in 1960, do I have him here? Here he is. See if any of you recognize. This guy. Yes. So this is Antoine Tétrault. Anybody know who he is? He was the local faith healer here in town. We're the current Thousand Island Museum, not Thousand Island Museum, Thousand Island Art Museum.
Yeah.
So he was a faith healer in the village, and I had a hip disease called hip perthes. And I took a long time to heal. I was in a hospital 2.5 years. Didn't walk till I was 9. And I'm sure a lot of my slow healing process, and kids still get it today, but they pin their hip, put them in a body cast, 6 months they're better. Back then they put you in a leg traction. They didn't know what to do. And in my instance, I think nutrition had a huge part to it. So my mother took me to him. And you went into his waiting room, and hundreds of crutches and pictures of people that he had healed.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Did he cure you or help you?
Well,
Wow.
so I went in with my mother, and he had a big altar of Christ, very religious man, and they have a booklet out on what called him to do this, and took me in and did some manipulation and made me walk, which I wasn't walking at the time. My mother's crying and I'm crying, and yeah. So I had an appointment with the pediatrician in Watertown, a guy named Heap. And my mother said, if you tell that man that you went to this guy, I will wring your neck. And my mother was pretty frightening. I got it. So went in and had x-rays done. And the doctor came back and says, geez, you son's made remarkable progress. He can walk again. And I started walking again.
Never told him.
Never
So
told
was
him.
he a chiropractor before the time of chiropractor?
Well, I think he, to be honest with you, I actually talked to a chiropractor about the whole incident, and he seemed to think that you do have impingements that will limit your mobility,
Sure.
and that he manipulated me so that I got more blood flow. I don't know whatever the
Circulation.
circulation,
Yeah.
and that maybe that was what did it, and that and that's how all these crutches ended up being on the wall of people that he had helped do that. So every year the Catholic Church does a healing mass in his honor, and they have no recognition of him at the Thousand Island Art Center. And one of the things I'm going to lobby for is when they get this new place built, is to put something aside in honor of this man.
Wasn't that his house?
That was his house. Yep.
Yeah,
Which one was it?
Oh, wow.
The
Yeah.
art museum.
Yeah, the art museum, that was his house. That's what he
The
practiced
original
on.
one that's there on,
John
what's
Street?
that, John Street?
John
Right
Street.
next to the funeral home.
Yeah, and I think the waiting room is a closet. So, it's
So,
good recognition, huh? Yeah, so that was a cool experience.
how long had you been afflicted before you saw him?
I got it when I was 2.5 years old, and I saw him when I was 9.
Wow.
Wow.
So I got it in one leg in hospital for 2.5 years. went back home, and that's when my grandfather died, and I convinced my parents not to put me back in the hospital and to bring me up here, and I drove my mother crazy, and you know, I had the school a school bus driver would come to the school, come to the house, carry me to the school bus, take me there. When they had fire drills, high school kid would come down and carry me outside. And the second grade classroom, the door entry, I had a wheelchair, and I think there's still I think there's still nicks in the siding. Yeah, from when I ran into it. So, yeah, and I think that's why I kind of like this kind of stuff. Is that the only thing I had in the hospital? We had no TV.
Right.
You know, had no horrible nutrition. Is I had toys. Is my parents brought me toys, and that was where my creative outlet became. Is I was part of the toy.
Did you read?
Well, it's
No,
it's
I didn't know how.
tactile.
No, I didn't know how to read. I had when I went, I had some kindergarten training in the hospital with ABCs and numbers, and went to the first grade class. Went to the first grade class when I went home to Wattsville and was there one day and told the school teacher the only person that told me what to do is my mother. And that was the last day I was in a formal class because I was on crutches. And so I got an intercom connected up to my bed. I had a sunshine basket. All the kids gave me a toy. I opened up every day. And I had a retired principal tutor me for 6 months. And that got me up to the third grade level, but they said emotionally I was at the second grade and that you better go to the second grade. So when we moved to Clayton, I went into the second grade in a wheelchair, then crutches, and then visited Antoine. So at 9 years old, I could run again. And I had bullies as a kid that would make fun of me. And I remember one kid on the bus, and I hit him with my crutch. And I hurt the kid. And my father says, Paul, you can't be swinging your crutch at kids. And I go, well, they're calling me names and whatnot. And he goes, well, you got to figure out how to deal with it. And so, you get in fights as a kid, and they didn't last long. And, bullies just, I've never liked bullies for that particular reason. This is probably 1956. So this is one of my first toys, and I still have it. This is a Matchbox. So I have a huge Matchbox collection, but this is one of the first. This is a model of yesteryear. This is a bullnose from England.
Wow.
So Matchbox was out of England, and I repainted it and didn't do a bad job as a kid. But this is one of my first toys as a kid. So I always liked small things because in a hospital bed, the early pictures were with me with merry-go-rounds and I had a bed full of toys, and I remember throwing all the toys onto the floor, and the big black maid person that cleaned picked them all up and says, I'm going to give them away. And I cried and cried and cried and cried, and I obviously got smaller toys. And when I went home from the hospital, my parents gave all the toys away to her. So I thought that was very cool. So, yeah, so I've always loved that toy, that object thing.
Did you have any friends when you were in the hospital?
No. There was, I think I met one kid, but I had a room to myself for pretty much that 2.5 years. I did get physical therapy, which probably got me into being an exercise physiologist. And I would go into the hallway, and a physical therapist would do leg manipulations with me. And next door was the iron lung room, and Johnny had polio, and Johnny would come into the iron lung room for his treatment, and he would leave before I got done my treatment. And one day Johnny didn't come out. And I go, what happened to Johnny? And he go, we can't help Johnny anymore, but we can help you, and you're going to get better, so you need to help other people. And here's this guy telling me that when I'm 4 years old.
Wow.
So I had my lesson in life early that my purpose here, was to help other people. And, and you got to figure out what that path is. And we've, all taken our own paths and have our own rich stories. And, grateful that I'm here and I'm able to, to share it with you all. And I appreciate the time and you all enjoying this beautiful land up here. Thank you very much. Any more questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, y'all are great. Yeah, feel free to look at any of the stuff up there if you'd like to.
Oh, yeah, they had a, hobo.
Yeah, but it was really bad.
Yeah, it was really bad. I saw
Are
pictures
you
of it.
substitute teaching for science now?
I'm substitute teaching K through 12, so I'm doing all.
My daughter's an earth science teacher.
Is she really?
Yeah.
Oh, I love earth science.
Yeah,
That
she
was,
did.
I tell you what, earth science was because there's so many things, and I was offered an earth science job 3 years ago, and I turned it down because
I don't think
just,